a lot of people are afraid of what is happening right now. There is a lot of chaos, and we can get really dark in our thinking about what's to come. But what if what is happening right now isn't the end, but is like a tipping point, a catalyst for positive change that is coming from the ground up to the people in power? Dr. Elizabeth Philipose has a lifelong passion for evolution and the expansion of consciousness. She is an academic and studies the causes and consequences of violence, as well as the pathways to seek peace. She's also a spiritual guide. She offers individual counseling and workshops in decolonial wellness. That means kind of understanding your place in a post-colonial world. If you would like to join any of her courses, she actually has a creative writing course to build community, reduce loneliness, and inspire creativity. I'm going to put the link to that in the description. I'm Jennifer Dillon. This is the Bounce Back Generation podcast. We explore what makes us resilient, emotionally resilient, and where to find our own personal power and exert that in a very chaotic world. So there's so much happening right now, and I'm really glad to talk with you because you're here for a second time, a second round with us, and the first podcast that you did with us, you talked about what we called the matrix, this kind of invisible system that makes winners and losers out of us. And the way that you talked about it, and particularly the way in which we unravel ourselves from the matrix, which is basically to be aware of it, really, really opened my eyes. I truly and continue to see the world differently now. And these are things that I knew kind of on a conceptual level, but didn't feel on an emotional level, didn't feel like it was like part of how I looked at the world. And so I thought of you because obviously we are in a very chaotic and dangerous time. And I wanted to talk with you and see what your thoughts are on where we are and where we're heading.
Yeah, great. I'm so happy to have that conversation. We're in the fire of what's been coming for a long time. I think, that the thing that we can call a matrix is a long history of structural and systemic power, that colonial paradigm that has enshrined kind of white supremacy as a system and a structure and all the things that go with it, the control of women's bodies, the invention of borders, the establishment of, many degrees of inequality, and that grid, that's been mapped onto us that can just move populations around depending on what the political needs are of the day. So we're in the fire of that's been coming for a long time because it's established on a profound contradiction, and it's established contrary to our nature, right, which is social and connected, and by nature we need each other, right? It's also the profound contradiction of the separation of humans and environment and the exploitation of the earth. We've come to, we're in the fire of that too. It's not in the future. None of this stuff is in the future. For a long time, it was in the future.
It's here.
It's here. We're
all
here.
of it, and all of it converging at the same time. There was a period of time, over the past several decades, looking at, the civil rights marches in the 60s and kind of opening up of, kind of that kind of hippie, we're going to open things up and we're going to be more loving and caring, and then a lot of changes and things being implemented from a political perspective or policy perspective to take care of people, whether it's Medicare or Medi-Cal or nutrition benefits for kids and things like that. Do you see this as like a last gasp to take all of that back, or is this a renewed power grab that just eats off of the old one? Are we fooling ourselves that we were making some progress to have more of a sense of we're going to take care of each other because if I take care of you, it ends up taking care of me, which is a very different way of thinking than that kind of colonial power empire structure that you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so, it's always been true that there's a distinction to be made between people, populations, and leadership. And the leadership historically, it's a calculation about what's going to serve the nation or what's going to serve the economy. And, any capitalist thinker will tell you that you can't immiserate a population and keep an economy going. So there's a basic level within capitalism. There is a kind of social welfare impulse to take care of people so that you have workers, so that you have a future.
And you have consumers too, people to buy your stuff.
Consumers, yes. So population is power in that sense, and so it's manipulated. So you can have those sort of progressive, caring policies, right? And so we see that in different countries, right? So all the social welfare states we can name, like Canada or Sweden or Norway or Denmark, they're capitalist countries, but they have a safety net because that serves, right? It serves the nation, it serves the economy. Ordinary people are not looking to dominate other people on a general basis. I think people are just looking to live their lives, to actually have a modicum of peace, right? That where people are cared for so that you can trust the social conditions. You don't have to be afraid of other people because everybody has their needs met, right? And so, it's like, I think the population has to be distinguished from the leadership. This is where kind of that matrix thought comes in, is that we as people have been deceived. We have been manipulated. We have been lied to. And that's not just here, that's a kind of global mechanism of deception and lies. And so, what we're seeing in this moment is a breakdown of those lies, that web of deception, a turning point, right? So we've already been seeing through the illusions, right? And certainly if you talk to racialized people in the United States, there's far fewer illusions, right, about equality or fairness. Certainly if you, talk to women who are awake to sexism and misogyny in the workplace, for instance, right? That, so the illusion's been chipping away. But I think what this administration is doing and the wave of authoritarian leadership around the world is doing is making transparent what was always the impulse, right? What was always the guiding force of leadership. And so, so is it a last power grab? Yes. Because, that's the populations have moved on. We're far more progressive as just people than the leadership is. And that would be, doesn't matter what party. Those are the elites of society who are keeping the wealth for themselves one way or the other, right? Finding ways to monopolize wealth. So, we have moved on. There's far more visibility of what we'll call sexual minorities. There's far more visibility of transgender people. We're seeing not just individual identities, but we're seeing, that systemic lie that there's two ways to be, male or female, and that they fit into this box and that box, and everything else is disordered or deviant, right? They're laying bare just by being visible the lie of that kind of system, right? You can't put that back in the box. It can harm some people for sure, but you can't put that, those lies back in the box. We've seen it, right? We understand it. The lies about redistribution of wealth, the lies about if you work hard, you will succeed. Well, I think that's been chipping away for a long, long time. We see the, the lies that immigrants take more than they give. I think, the facts have already been, laid out, and that's by labor market economists, for instance, right? You don't have to be politically progressive. You just got to look at the
numbers.
Look at the numbers. Look at how it works, right? Look at who's committing crimes, right? Like all of the things that are said about immigrants are precisely opposite to what's true. it's amazing to me how doublespeak it is,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not even just a little bit false, it's absolutely false, all of
Yeah.
the things that are told. So I just feel like, one of the meanings of the word apocalypse is revelation. It's
No
where
kidding.
everything will be revealed,
Hmm.
right? And it's apocalyptic because once all is revealed, everything has to fall apart.
Well, I think that's one of the theories that what's happening right now is maybe there's a kind of hands-off approach, let it burn kind of thing. Let's see what happens when you chase immigrants off of the field. When they're picking strawberries, what happens to your strawberry, in the grocery store. I went to the grocery store this morning and they said we don't have any bananas. Tariffs, what happens when you take away health care from people, when you annihilate the science of the backbone of the science that runs everything from health to technology. So we are kind of being faced with that revelation. But there still seems to be, well, there still is just a certain percentage of the population that either does not want to see the numbers or sees the numbers and doesn't care because it feels really, really good to feel superior over an immigrant or a person who is trans or a gay person or a person of color. They don't want to give that up. You can
Yeah.
call it whatever. I mean, obviously it's racism, but it is a sense of superiority, a sense of I am special by nothing except that I am not them.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I mean, it's deeply trained and programmed in us, especially, especially in the US. One of the blindnesses of empire is that we're the only ones that matter. And so it's like a kind of a global, anti-global perspective, that we're the center of the universe and we're the best and all those things. And other people are coming to take it away from us.
Or they're not human even.
They're not human. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's how you can do this kind of harm and violence to people, right? And say it's okay. Yeah, there is that. It's what would be called a psychological wage. It's connected to white supremacy. We call it the wages of whiteness, which, it's a psychological wage, just like you're saying, because it feeds a sense of superiority. And, it's a salve, it's a pacifier for the fact that, I'm not that happy.
I'm
You
not
know,
making the money that I think I should make. Half my family's on some kind of substance because of depression and anxiety about everything. Yeah.
yes,
Yes. Yes.
yes. And this leader, comes and says it's everybody else's fault. It's other
Hmm.
people's fault, and that also feeds that psychological wage,
Yeah.
that somehow, is solace and makes it okay. So true that, right? True that is part of a thread. I want to just go back to what you said about, let's let it burn.
Hmm.
Okay. Because, yeah, we are not here to rescue that old system, right? And we're not trying to save those systems because they've been exposed and we see, right? And we have something to do in the meantime, right? Not to just passively watch it burn, allow it to burn. There's a lot of learning to be done as things are being exposed. There's a lot of awareness, to cultivate not just ourselves, but anybody that we're talking to. It's important to speak truth wherever we're going, right? Because this is the time for people to see what they couldn't see before. It's also important to just mind the lessons so that what we create in this process, right, as things fall apart, we need to become creators, activated creators of what comes next. What comes next has everything to do with what we do now, right? And so we do have a big mandate, right, to say, okay, that is passing, and here I am in this gap, right? And what is mine to do now? What is mine to know now? Yeah.
So in this kind of, I guess, dialectic moment, we could be doing, there our individual actions are extremely powerful to be pointing out, look at that as it burns, and let me explain why that's happening. That's different than what you thought. It's not the immigrant's fault. It is actually certain, this is the power structure that has exerted power or is trying to exert power upon you. This is how it looks. It is bald face. It is, open gloved. It is doing what it's doing. And now you can see it. And then the next stage is that like an envisioning process, I suppose. What is next? What do we do next? What is the dream or the vision that we want to create instead? Because I think what you are saying is very optimistic, and I believe it's true that there is no way that in the long run this kind of power will succeed when there are so many of us. And so I think it's very difficult to manage, as we can see what's happening in Los Angeles, this kind of public outcry. And I think that people that on the eve of the No Kings marches, I think we're going to see that there you cannot, even with the great military power and assuming that all the soldiers say, yeah, we're gonna suppress our people. I don't think that you can manage a country like this.
Yeah, that I'm optimistic based in substance. And so when I look around the world, people are activated everywhere, and it's all activation against corrupt authority. Whatever version of authority is happening, it's all patriarchal.
Mm-hmm.
It's all, racist.
Yep.
It's all founded in these systems of inequality. And so there might be these cultural inflections, but it's all like that same system coming apart. I don't think, yes, it's not sustainable. I saw some numbers, of National Guard and Marines that are just such a tiny percentage of the population of California,
Right.
right? Like that to suppress a population this size, Los Angeles, California, very challenging. I think also that when power becomes obvious, when power becomes militarist and authoritarian and making all of these restrictions and stuff, that's when it's at its weakest. That's when it has lost consent. That's when it has lost popular agreement.
That's such an interesting point that when you've had to come to physical threat and physical violence, you have lost all of those structures that we had in place, those norms that everybody has kicked aside that just kept things moving along so that you could focus on, hey, I'm going to school or I'm starting a business and not focusing on, oh my God, there's cars on fire in the street or whatever. Soldiers are marching in. That's a really, really powerful little marker to recognize. One of those things that you point out and say, look, if they have to do that, they have lost. They have
Yeah,
lost consent. And that's
yeah,
huge. Yeah.
yeah.
So one of the things that I thought would be really interesting to speak with you, because I think that we nibble at the edges around this subject, which is a larger kind of philosophical, maybe a spiritual perspective that you've touched upon, that really what what is happening is we have spent many, many decades, centuries building up this kind of individualist kind of perspective. It's all about me and mine. I'm going to get my house, my car, my job, my bank account. I'm going to take care of my people, my things, and a separation from what happens to the collective, right? And then, like you were saying, like not recognizing how if I harm somebody else, it will somehow redound back to me. That we have completely created this world, this fiction that if I hurt somebody else, if I hurt an immigrant, it doesn't have anything to do with me. Actually, it benefits me. And I think that is maybe you could talk about that, this kind of individualistic versus collective perspective and the many years long push against this idea of one world order, that was demonized, the whole concept of, the same thing with the environment, that seeing the environment as something, if you hurt if there's a mine in Africa that's damaging the water of the tribe that lives nearby, it'll affect us eventually. That's really how the world works, from an environmental scientific perspective.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's one planet, yeah, and we're all just Earthlings.
Right.
Everybody we know is here.
Well, it's like a house. Like if you lived in a house where, people are being oppressed in one side of the house and can't leave their room and all the garbage is being thrown in their room, eventually you're going to get, residual effects. The rodents are going to come into your space, the noise and the fighting that might go on in that's going to spill over into, I mean, there's so many metaphors that we can use to understand it. But the very concept of we are all connected has really has some very, very negative connotations to a lot of people who ascribe to religious perspectives. Who's, oh, no, 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 it's all about me and my family, and economically people don't see it. I've got to get mine and prevent you from getting yours.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that is the setup of this paradigm of, radical individualism. It goes with also a claim of a liberal level playing field. And so everybody has the same opportunity, that there's no structures or systems. So part of what the ideology of radical individualism has done is prevents us from understanding systems and structures of power. And so there's still a lot of people, if you say, no, systemically there is sexism, right? That still people will say, well, that's not true. That's history, long ago history. And so one thing I think is really important for us now is to learn about systems and structures of power, to really learn about capitalism, the nature of capitalism, the assumptions, the belief systems, all that thing. We don't need to become economists. We just need to understand, the belief systems that fuel it, right? So yes, that radical individualism, the notion that we are separate, it really has only served authority, and it was invented to serve authority. It was invented to keep us separate and apart from each other, so that tyranny happens, and we call it democracy. So elite power happens, and we say, well, yeah, that's government. I voted for them.
Yeah, they
So
represent me. Yeah.
that's right. So it keeps us from really having an understanding. It's beyond, it's not just that, we're not connected to each other, but we're not connected to anything,
Yes.
it's sort of disconnected from, institutions, structures, systems, all those things, right?
Yeah, and I think what that does is for the average person, if you are raised in a system that says, you're it, you're the one, you're the, everything's about you, that in itself raises a sense of fear in me.
Yes.
Because I know deep down inside, boy, I don't know if I can handle all this stuff. And I do need other people. I need my tribe. I need my people. I need my support. And so we then carry around this kind of low level anxiety about, boy, if I don't make it, if I don't get into the right school and then get the right career and make this kind of money, then I'm stranded out here.
Yeah.
And then I have to go beg somebody instead of just like, hey, can I get help? You have to go and, well, oops, I made a mistake and I didn't make enough money. And can you let me sleep on your couch?
Yeah.
I think the other example that I think of when you talk about capitalism in particular is, and this kind of revelation of capitalism, is what we see happening with AI, where everybody who is an AI scientist has basically come out and said, we don't really understand the implications of what we're doing. It is very scary. We need some guardrails, but we are also in a capitalist system and we better rush to be the first. So we have designed a system that on one hand, we know is dangerous. And on the other hand, we can't stop it because you're supposed to be the first one
Yeah.
to hit general intelligence, even though we have no idea how that's going to impact us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so that you're sort of speaking to the importance of kind of rethinking what we're creating, because AI, just like everything else, religion and education and whatever we've created, if we're creating it out of the same set of impulses and assumptions and belief systems, it's only going to reproduce it in new ways, right? And in dangerous ways, unknowable ways, like you're saying. Yeah, and I've come across that recently, really, progressive thinking people who are scrambling to get ahead of the AI revolution so that they'll have jobs, right?
Yes.
So it just is part of the same kind of impulse. We should know AI is a huge resource suck, that those databases require incredible amounts of water to cool them.
Yeah.
And so wherever they're putting those kinds of industries, right, all of the water in that region will be redirected to feed those machines. So it's an environmental disaster.
Yes.
Besides everything else.
But yet we cannot stop it.
Yeah, I mean, we can't stop it, because there's so many interests behind it, and it's, by the time it comes to us, it's already well on its way, by the time we're even aware of it. It's true. So those are the kinds of things that we're confronted with. There's not an easy, really, answer to that.
No.
I do think it comes back to really understanding where we are and who we are, and importantly, establishing who we want to be. Who do you want to be, right, in this world? Because that's part of what has been taken from us, is the definitions of who we are and who we can be and who we're meant to be, right? Even our aspirations and visions for ourselves are monopolized, right?
Yes. Well, I wonder if we need a kind of values check, collective values check. And what is it that we truly value? And I think why I feel this is an especially dangerous time is that as we hurtle towards all of these very scary moments and events, we are, at the same time we're hitting that terrible event, we're also, our eyes are opening. There's very little space in between, holy shit, what's happening, and hitting the wall, right?
Yeah.
So what can I think one thing that's been missing in the discourse is that conversation about where can we make a decision, can we make some decisions now, or some conversation, I guess, now about things like, well, we value human beings, we value connection with other people. We value, I talk about this with the young people that we work with, that, I think despite all the technology and the AI, what is the most valuable thing is the thing that AI cannot do, cannot be an empathetic human, can't understand your feelings, can't create out of nothing, which we can.
Yes.
And then from that platform, do kind of a sci-fi exercise about what could things look like 10 years from now, 15, 20 years from now.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Well, I think part of what's breaking down is also the absence of shared values and the polarization of how we think we should live and all that. So it's really crucial that we do make a claim on how we want to live and who we want to be, and that is it's a values conversation. There's a few, I think there are a number of places to look for this. So we have decades and decades and decades of feminist activism and scholarship and thinking. Wherever women are, feminists have studied those institutions and those structures and those systems for the purpose of transformation, right? So it's decades of scholarship and insight and analysis that show us how to create better ways of being, right? And show us a certain set of values, right? That, starting from the lives of women, it takes us to everybody, all of life, basically. We should look at, the decades and decades and decades of Black freedom movements in the United States
Right.
that are coming with a clear vision of how we should live and also doing, right? So the Black Panther movement was a movement of social services, of
Yep.
taking care of people, of creating community. People know how to do this, you
Yeah.
see. There's people who have not been in positions of privilege, who have had to invent, right, ways of mutual aid, of creating networks, of being there for people. So community for the mainstream of US population might be, a foreign thought, but actually racialized populations know how to do it,
Yeah.
right? So Black freedom, Vietnamese who came in the 1970s, was it? The populations of people who have come and figured out how to do it here because nothing's being given,
Yeah.
that they know how to create community. I just want to say one more thing on the values and principles is we have, and this we can be cynical about it, but that doesn't serve us. We have decades and decades and decades of deep legal universal principles of human rights. And just because states don't abide by them, right, that they've been diminished, right, in how valuable they
And you
are.
mean states as in internationally states?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, governments don't abide by it. So it makes it seem like human rights is a joke. But if you look at the human rights system and the body of law that's been, created at least since the end of World War II, has been established, so many treaties, so many principles, so much a world vision, a vision of a world in which everybody is included, a vision of a world in which everybody has what they need, right? And the international human rights principles, it guarantees the right to adequate nutrition. It guarantees the right to housing. Everybody has the right to housing, right? Meaningful work, leisure time, right? It is a blueprint, right? For if we had half of the human rights that are articulated there, we would be in a very different world. And so I just want to also say, like, we are not in a vacuum, right? We're in actually rich terrain of thinking about liberation and freedom and dignity and all the things, that we care about. That human rights system is created by global legal thinkers, dedicated jurists and lawmakers, people who are convicted of the principles of human rights. That's what gives it such depth and legitimacy and, and then research and scholarship and all the things. So I just want to point that out too.
I appreciate that. I mean, as somebody who, is a lawyer for over a decade, and one of the things that I've really held on to is, again, there's nothing that makes you love law more than to live in lawlessness, where you have a king, one person that just sends out edicts. Nobody likes that. They think they'll like it. They think like, the whole benevolent dictatorship idea is, oh, maybe that's our best. I had a conversation with someone last night who said, maybe that's our best way. And it's like, just stop. We've been through this, through many, many years of, centuries of developing these laws. It's easy to come up with a law that says the king gets to say X, Y, and Z, and then it's done. That doesn't last for more than a minute because, like you said, it's the populace that comes up. There is a need to develop consent or else you are fighting on every street corner. And that consent comes by recognizing that you need laws that protect people's everything, their rights, their property, whatever it is. And when you start to see that slipping, it is a very disturbing, and I don't care what political side you're on. We like laws and we like laws that are fairly executed. And so I think that platform that we stand on of, centuries of developing from the Magna Carta on of, and habeas corpus and those kinds of things are extremely powerful and will not go away. But I think there's a really, I just kind of had this picture in my mind when you talk about these subsets of us, whether it's women, and the scholarship around gender, the deep history of particularly in the Black community in this country, of developing these very, very strong community structures. We just did a documentary about folks living in one of the public housing sites up here in San Francisco. And although, yes, it is extremely stressful and oftentimes traumatic to live in public housing, there's a lot of violence and drug use and family breakdowns and things like that. But there is an intense feeling of community, which comes across in we interviewed 6 different people. And throughout, it was about that community, about that bond. And one person said, everybody who lives here, they're all my cousins. Hey, cuz. And that is if you look at, the country as a fabric and you start to rip the fabric will rip in those places where there is not that kind of woven, tight community, that sense that everybody is my cousin. And that is another reason why I think this country is very, very difficult to manage. You can't authoritarianism, you can't take it over. I think it'd be very difficult.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like who really needs to tune into the fact that we are interdependent, are privileged populations.
Yes.
Who are not don't feel the pressure, right, of their individualism or see the value of it. Privileged populations, some of the woes of individualism, they might not be material, but they will be emotional, and they will be spiritual, and they will be, all the things.
Yeah. I think we know that. I think one of the benefits of social media is that you get to see a lot of how people live or profess to live when they have a lot of money, right? Or they have a lot of privilege. And that life is sad in some ways because there seems to be a lack of that kind of dependency on each other. Because you don't need to. You can have someone you can pay someone to take care of your kids. You can pay someone to drive you around. You can pay someone to, do your makeup and buy your clothes. So you don't have that need that the rest of us have to develop that close community of, hey, somebody needs to come and help me take care of my kid because I'm a single mom and I need help sometimes. And I don't, I can't pay someone to do it. So I look to my friend and then I have to have that attitude of communality, which is a gift and a talent that we develop when we depend on each other. We walk around differently, we talk differently, we think about other people's feelings, we develop empathy because that's the transaction. I will help you and I will be empathetic in your condition, and you will help me and you'll be empathetic in my condition.
Yeah.
And it's a gift that we have, and let's use it. What would we talked about kind of developing a sense of the future. Are there maybe some visions that you have of how you would like to see things go? Let's say post-Trump, post whatever we're going to go through, or even as we're going through it, that we could be striving for or thinking about or...
Yeah. Yeah, I think, politics are just relationships in the macro, right?
Right.
So we can start now, everywhere we go, being the kind of, community member, bringing the energy that we want to experience, that we want to grow and cultivate. We have a lot of inner work to do. And that inner work is about unraveling the sense of separation that we have been trained to walk in, right? So things like implicit bias, things like that we don't notice, right? Things that are not coded as exclusive, and yet we just think that way, right? Take a word like leadership. So we need to do our inner work to become the right condition for the kind of society that we want to live in and to be in. So that's partly taking responsibility, right? It's not blame, we didn't create it, but it's responsibility for how things go because here I am.
Yeah.
I care about this. I think it's important to not put that off into the future, that we have the
Mhm.
inner work to do to become the vision we want to see in the world and to walk with it, to reach out to people around us, to connect with neighbors we've never talked to before, right? To have that be available, be a community. Community comes out of us. And so we need to be that and do that right now, wherever we are. And then I think it's really important to also invest in the future. So emotionally, our belief system, right? This is, I'm thinking of what Naomi Klein calls end times fascism.
Hmm.
And it's a very good explanation, for how all of these strands come together in agreement, right? And what she calls in a Frankenstein.
Yes.
And it's like all these different kind of groups don't believe in the future. They
Yeah.
don't have an investment in the future. And so if you think, wow, this leader is blowing things up, it's kind of like that, right?
I call it a death cult.
Yeah, it's a death cult, and it's actually follows, right, from the systems we've set up that have been founded on death and fear of death and controlling
Yes.
death and therefore life, right, rather than in concert with life, right? That's also the patriarchal move, right? That patriarchy is a system of survival, staving off death. The only reason you need to control women's bodies is if survivalism is a
Yeah.
thing. But that is a death cult
Yes.
to be
Yes.
living in survivalism, right? So yes, it's kind of penultimate, we're seeing it. It comes together with Christian nationalists, right, whose
Yeah.
investment in Israel is about the end times, the
The
second coming.
apocalypse,
That's
hurrying it
right.
along so that Jesus comes back, and then Jesus hurts everybody except for them. So it's a extrapolation of the whole motto or
Yes.
methodology of living, which is I'm on top and I can't wait till Jesus comes and smotes you.
Well, none of it has anything to do with the
Christianity.
teachings of Jesus. Yeah. If we were living, if we were living in concert with the teachings of Jesus, we would have the community that includes everybody, that is forgiving, that is compassionate, that heals.
We would be welcoming our neighbor. We would be
Yeah.
feeding them. We would be putting shoes on the children. We would
Yeah.
be taking in the immigrants, giving them
Yes.
a home. We would be saving people on the side of the road for no good reason except to just do it.
Yeah.
We would be loving each other as we love ourselves.
Yes, all of it
Right.
is. So there's another set of principles that we do have, that I always kind of say we need to rescue God from the
Yeah.
Christians. We need to take God back from
Yes.
the Islamists. We need to retrieve God, from all of the people who are using God to manipulate
Yeah.
people. Like God is there's nothing wrong with God. It's just the way it's being deployed, you know?
God's brand is being used by other people
Yeah,
to do things that God would not want to be done.
that's
Right.
right. That's right.
And
Yeah.
Jesus too, and poor Jesus, the whole thing with the cross and using the cross as a way to hurt people.
I know that there's a lot of resistance to taking up religion, and I'm not at all saying that we should do that,
Oh
but
yeah.
retrieve those principles. And when you look at kind of mysticism, mysticism, there's a lot of ways to talk about it, but the way that I think about mysticism is that it is about a direct relationship with the divine. And that direct relationship with the divine means that the divine is not outside of us. The
Yeah.
divine is here in the midst of us. We are the divine spark, right, brought into material existence. And when we kind of connect with our own divinity, when we connect with the essence, the core, the original nature, right, of who we are, we're connecting not just with ourselves. As soon as you connect with the divine within, you have connected with the spark of life in all things, right? In all creatures. If you recognize it in yourself, part of what we've been kind of distanced from is going within. That's through religions that make it all about an external authority, an external God. It's through our systems and structures that don't encourage us to know ourselves, right? And so when we know ourselves truly beyond personality and ego and mind, when we drop in, this is why meditation matters. This is why those practices matter, because then we're catching a glimpse of the universal that exists within us, and therefore, that becomes the basis for our connection. Every religion has mystical principles. Every religion talks about one life, one God, one creative life force, right? It's all about unity. In all of the prophets that have ever arisen, arose in conditions of corrupt authority to remind us that we are the power, that we are the divine, that we are sovereign beings, right? Not brought into existence by humans, brought into existence by absolute intelligence.
Well, isn't it extraordinary that when you go in and you connect with everything, you you end up with the individualism that we want so badly. But it's a different kind of individualism. It is that divine spark of being part of the larger creation. And we have manufactured this fake, individualism of us versus them. But the way in is through them and us and connecting with the planet and connecting deep inside ourselves. And then we find I am wonderful. I am those things. I am special.
Yes,
But it's a different kind of special. It's not a special that has to bring other people down.
yes. No, it's undifferentiated from the whole. And so it's an essential me that is not separate from anything. My me-ness is unified, right? So I think of it, you can think of it this way, like a drop in the ocean, right? You're a drop of water in the ocean. There's a specificity to you. You're a drop, right? But all of the qualities of ocean water are in that drop, right? And so you can't exist without the ocean.
Yeah.
And in your existence, all of the qualities of life are there.
Well,
Yeah.
this is patterned all over our lives. Our bodies are like that. Every cell in our bodies like that. Look at fractals are like that. I mean, there's everything in our existence represents that you are both individual and an essential, you have the whole in you as well. And yeah, and if we could see that, I think we would relax a little bit into this idea, not feel like it's so foreign or so scary to me to be thinking that, oh, well, I'm going to lose myself in the collective,
Yeah.
that we're already in the collective, whether you like it or not.
We're
And all you're doing is
inseparable.
recognizing it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It is a perceptual shift to what's already true, what's
Yes.
already real. Yes, what already exists. And it's only at the level of perception that we suffer, right? We suffer from a sense of separation. And so we go about our lives as though we're separate. But we're not. So we just shift that perspective. It's a tiny little shift, but it changes everything.
Would you be open to doing a meditation that could help us to do that connection, to
Yeah.
find that with that I think because that's how I find it is through meditation, through mindfulness. But sometimes people don't know how to meditate or have never done it before, or
Yeah.
they hear the noise in their mind and they don't interpret that as just that's what happens and eventually and they don't see that they're the noticer of the noise, they're the
Right.
objective observer of the noise. And yeah, if you want to close this out, unless you have something else you want to say, but if you want to close this out with a meditation, I think that would be fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. I think I said everything.
Yeah, I'm feeling so great. I mean, like I said, it's the eve of the No Kings marches, and I feel very, optimistic that we, the people, know what we need to do in our hearts, and we're going to go do it, and we're not going to let this aberration in our evolutionary history to win out over all of the hard work that we've done to find each other and to be there for each other and to be one on this planet, trying to evolve to better places than we've
Mm-hmm.
been, and to deeper understanding of who we really are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I feel like this moment is part of our evolutionary path. It's an evolutionary catalyst to be in this moment. Yeah, it's a catalyst for us to wake up, and more people, and so many things have happened to keep waking us up. Right, this is the latest wave of consciousness that's waking up, and maybe it's the tipping point consciousness. Yeah, I don't know if I told you this before. There's studies that say it's about 11% of the population that's active. When they're activated, that's when massive social change happens. So it's about 11% of the population that threw the British out of India, 11% of the population that got the Civil Rights Act in the United States, that got suffragettes, got white women the vote. It's not
Doesn't have
everybody.
to be everybody. It's just what is the Margaret Mead saying? Nobody ever said. I'll pull it up, but it's the don't ever believe that a small group of people can create change. It's the only thing that ever has.
That's right.
This is not who we are. This is not who I am, and I'm going to operate out of kindness and love and empathy and connection.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I take that percentage as conscious, that it's consciousness that's exponential. And so however you enact that, just the waking awareness, right, of where we're at and what our role is.
Yeah, I just love talking to you. You always just shift my perception in just the right way. I mean, you're an extremely powerful and talented and wise person, and we need you. We need to have your voice amplified as much as possible because you're a ray of hope
Mm.
in what could be very depressing times.
Mm. Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. It's my joy, my purpose, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a joy to be living in your purpose. Would like to join any of her courses. She actually has a creative writing course to build community, reduce loneliness, and inspire creativity. I'm going to put the link to that in the description. I'm Jennifer Dillon. This is the Bounce Back Generation podcast. We explore what makes us resilient, emotionally resilient, and where to find our own personal power and exert that in a very chaotic world. Thanks for being here.